All right, let's go ahead and get started, everyone. Again, this is being recorded, and apologies for the confusion, and we appreciate you all making it to the correct Zoom, so thank you very much. Let me get started here, but before we do that, I'm just going to actually introduce the United Way team that's going to be going over the presentation with you. But we aren't going to do introductions on the phone or anything, just because it'll take us a very long time. So let's see here. We have in the room, I'll just let each of us introduce themselves. So we have
Carlene Sandu, Program Specialist. Ellen Liang, Development Institutional Grants.
Anna Lee, Vice President, Community Impact.
And Elise, Program Specialist.
Great, and I'm Kelly Batson. I am the Senior Vice President of Community Impact here at United Way. So I have muted all of you. You can unmute yourselves if you need to. We prefer if you go ahead and write your question in the chat box of the Zoom webinar. I understand some of you might not actually be looking at a webinar and you're just listening in. And so we will pause for questions and you can ask them on the phone. But if you have a question, go ahead and put that in the chat box and we'll get through that. We'll pause here and there throughout the webinar. We're also going to go through some questions and answers that we've already received in our email inbox. And we're going to go through that and tell you how to send more questions as you're reviewing the RFP. So thank you. Welcome to the Region 3 Administrative Community-Based Organization Census 2020 RFP webinar. That's a mouthful. We're happy to be able to play this role, and we're excited you've joined us to hear more about the RFP. So we wanted to start with our mission and vision before we jump into some of the census things. United Way Bay Area's mission is to be the catalyst that inspires people to invest in each other to strengthen our communities. We envision a strong, vibrant, and inclusive Bay Area where neighbors collaborate to create opportunities for everyone. And then we activate individuals and organizations to break the cycle of poverty. And poverty really is our focus here at the United Way. And we really feel that census is the census work ahead of us is central to our ability to do our mission and our work. So our agenda for the call today is to talk about the census a little bit. I know most of you, if you found your way to this call, probably know about it, but we want to review a few things that are key and top of mind for us. We want to talk about the role, and then we'll tell you about the RFP. So hopefully you all have, this is how you found this, as you looked at the RFP on our website at uwba.org/census. But we're going to go through the timeline, required documents, the application questions, some resources that you have, and some of the questions we've already received and some others that we've thought of. And if you hear some background noise here, we actually are taking a big Warriors picture in the room next door, and so we have lots of folks gathering and they may get a little loud, so sorry about that. All right, so we are counting on you. It's really the collaboration and the work of all of you as trusted messengers to do this census outreach work. And it's, a constitutional mandate, and it's going to be one of the most important processes that we have in our country, and it happens every 10 years. And this might be one of the most consequential census of our lifetimes, so it's a pretty big deal. We know that census data is used to allocate billions of dollars in federal funds to support our country's infrastructure, and of course it determines political representation both at the federal and the state level. And it is also an opportunity for every person in the whole country to be counted, to be seen, to be heard. It's an important part of our democratic process. And why is it important? Generally, historically, people of color, immigrants, low-income communities, children, seniors, and many others have been undercounted in the census. And we know California is one of the top states where we have the most hard to count folks. In fact, there's lots of numbers out there that say about 75% of the people who live in California are actually fall in one of the categories of hard to count. And we know that an undercount could result in a decrease in congressional representation. There's some very specific real risks of that here in California, and a decrease in federal resources for our infrastructure, public systems, public benefits. There's an estimate out there that it's about $2,000 per person that we could miss if we don't count them. And that's each year, so times that, times 10 for each person we don't count. And then there's some extra reasons why the census is important for this very specific year. We know that the Census Bureau is underfunded. We know that it's going to be online for the very first time. And that's going to be in limited languages on top of just being online and people having access to that. The timing is going to coincide with our new early primary. March 3rd is the California primary in 2020, and so there's going to be a lot of messages, lots of things coming at people, lots of fear, and that relates to the next bullet there. This is increased, there's a sense of increased fear and distrust of government right now, and we know that we need to get people over that to encourage them to take the census. And of course, there's a citizenship question, which is part of that, but not alone. We don't have that decision yet, but either way, I think this has created enough fear that, you know, it's already done some damage. And then our growing hard to count population, which we know about. So our goal, and we've decided, you know, if we were voting, just kidding, but if we were voting on, you know, our brand for the census, we like the count, right? C is for count, C is for census. But our goal is to ensure that every person in the Bay Area is counted. And we have lots of things going on around, you know, California's tagline is be counted. There's several counties saying everyone counts. And then of course the federal tagline is shape your future. So we're working, we know that this is an important part of our work and your work, and so that's really our goal. So the Region 3 ACBO, we're going to say ACBO a lot, and that stands for, we've already mentioned it, but the Administrative Community-Based Organization. And we were selected by the California State Census Office to be the ACBO for Region 3. We applied in February and we were awarded in March. The counties that we cover in Region 3 are 7 of the Bay Area counties: Alameda, Contra Costa, Marin, San Francisco, San Mateo, Santa Clara, and Solano. Both Napa and Sonoma, who are normally in the Bay Area, are actually part of Region 2 and belong to a different ACBO. As part of our role, we're going to be giving out funds, subcontracting funds, to support outreach efforts and census assistance, among other things. Part of the other part of our role for the census, for the ACBO is we're doing some marketing, we're doing technical assistance, we're going to be collecting data, we're going to be a regional convener of sorts. So there's more to come on that.
So now Elise, Program Specialist at United Way, I'm going to go through the RFP a little bit, just to give you a little bit more sense of what we are trying to prioritize and what we're focusing on. So United Way is really seeking to fund organizations, coalitions, and collaborations that are committed to a complete count of Bay Area residents with an emphasis on hard-to-count populations. And you can find the link to the RFP available at this link here on the screen. So some focus areas that we are really trying to hone in on, and we actually want folks to apply within these buckets. So the first one is a questionnaire assistance center. And so applying for this RFP basically states that you will serve as a census hub and assist Bay Area community members in accessing, understanding, and completing the questionnaire. Promotion, education, and outreach. So as in the title, promoting, educating, and outreaching targeted toward HTC populations to increase awareness and participation in the 2020 census. Language access, so support the language access needs for HTC populations. And this can look a couple of different ways. So if your organization or collaboration has capacity to do translation, as well as you actually want to serve as a hub for specific languages for people to complete the census, that's fine as well. The next bucket, technical assistance, provide TA to organizations who engage in census work. So you'll be the expert in the Bay Area, and folks can kind of lean on you for your expertise around the census. And then the last one, my favorite, is innovative strategies. So design, implement, and innovative strategies to reach HTC populations. Really looking forward to see how folks can get creative, especially in this climate, as Kelly mentioned with the citizenship question. So eligibility. So as of now, we are prioritizing and want to fund 501c3 nonprofit organizations or folks who have eligible fiscal sponsors. And I know there'll be some follow-up questions to that, so please use the chat box for that. Also looking for organizations who serve one or more of the following counties, which are the ones listed here. And of course, folks who do not discriminate based on race, color, national origin, citizenship status, and all the other things that you see listed here. So some priorities that we will be thinking about as we're rescoring and reviewing the applications. So we really want to hone in on folks who work regionally across multiple communities, counties, and cities. And this is because, one, we are the ACBO, and what that means is that we work at a regional level. So it would be great if majority of the folks that we fund are also working regionally. Folks who are working in partnership with the communities that they serve. So how are you engaging hard to count populations in your efforts around those bucket of areas that I just mentioned earlier? Folks who have demonstrated ability to outreach and engage with hard to count populations. So we know that folks are doing this work year round, even when the census is not on our radar. And so really looking to prioritize folks who have those relationships established. And are considered trusted messengers within the region and amongst targeted populations. So some basic grant requirements, and this list is not exhaustive and it could actually grow, but just wanted to give you guys a sense of what some of the requirements will be. The first one is to submit monthly data. The next is to attend required meetings, and again, a lot of this will come a little bit later down the line once we figure out who will actually be our grantees this year. Agree to communicate with United Way in the case that you're not able to meet what you signed up or applied to do. Use the funds for Census 2020 activities. Subgranting to other organizations is not allowed, and that you comply with all California subcontracting requirements, which we will give to you at some point. And so next is the timeline. So we've already released the RFP, which was May 28th, and we're doing the webinar now, so hello again. And then the next step is to submit the application, so they'll be due June 28th by 5 p.m. to the email address that you see on the screen. And that is a really hard deadline, not a minute after or any of that. And then we should know who we will be funding sometime in August. We don't want to give you a tentative date because a lot of folks are interested in this funding and we want to make sure we have enough time to get those awards out. And then late September, we will be hosting a convening of some sort / orientation just to onboard all of the grantees so they know the expectations.
Thanks, Elise. Harleen here again. I just want to go over some of the required documents for the census. So we will need you to fill out a cover sheet, which is a fillable PDF from the application. Again, the application can be found on our website if you did not receive it in an email, which is uwba.org/census. We'll also need the completed applicant and focus area questions, and those need to be submitted as a PDF. We need your IRS 501c3 determination letter as well as your 990 form, and it has to be the same fiscal year as your audit financial statements. We need your most recent financial audit or financial review, as well as, if applicable, your organization or fiscal sponsor's organizational budget, as well as a signed fiscal sponsorship collaborative relationship agreement, and that's only if it's applicable to you. And again, this is what the cover sheet looks like if you're on the computer with us. It's a fillable PDF. Please be sure to use this to keep everything in a nice, clean format. And I'm going to go over some of the questions that we have. We have 8 for everyone to fill out these next 8 questions. And we want to know a little bit about your organization's history and mission and purpose, especially as it relates to the census. We also want to learn a little bit more about any past or ongoing work with HTC populations or any past census activities that your agency has participated in, if applicable. And if your organization is receiving or if you're planning to apply for census funding elsewhere, we'd like to know where you'd be applying for that and what region and what HTC population you plan to serve. We also want to know how you're going to collaborate with other organizations or coalitions that are working on the census in your county or across the region, and identify any local partners with who you plan to engage with for census work. We would also like to know your strategy for addressing concerns and fears that have been raised by the potential citizenship question that may be added to the census. So please let us know what you plan to do with that, as well as what geographic regions you plan to target, and please be specific about that as well. Identify and describe the hard-to-count populations you plan to target and primary and secondary target population, as well as any specific census tracts that you aim to reach. And we also want to know what your plans are to measure success and how you want to evaluate the impact of your project. How do you know that you're successful in your plans? We'd like to know that. And then, so those are the questions for everybody. Now, Elise talked about the different focus areas that we have that we'll be funding. So based on that, you have specific questions you'll be answering. And I'm not going to go over all of these because it won't be applicable to everyone. But if you are applying for one or if you're applying for one or more, please be sure to answer all the questions in that focus area. So if you want to be a questionnaire assistance center as well as a technical assistance center, then be sure to answer all the questions that are underneath that bucket. Okay, and then we have Anna, who's going to go over a couple more resources, and we'll be answering some questions after that.
Hi, this is Anna. Just two resources that we wanted to highlight in case you were not aware. And these slides will be available on uwba.org/census. So first are the HTC maps. So these are maps of the hard-to-count populations. You can go to either of those links. They have maps on regions that have been identified as highly concentrated with hard-to-count populations, so you can check those out. And then the California Complete Count Office also has a bunch of resources, so you can check that out as well. I'm going to go over questions that we've gotten in our inbox, and I know that there have been a bunch of questions on the chat that you've chatted to us as well, so we'll try to answer as many as possible, and then we'll also open it up at the end for additional questions. So how much can I apply for? So grant amounts, as stated in the RFP, will range from $5,000 to $50,000. We didn't really want to set amounts for each category since we wanted there to be room to be creative, and we wanted to leave it open. We thought about having sample budgets, but we actually didn't want people to be fixated on whatever sample we set, so be creative. But those are the grant ranges. Another question we got, can cities apply for this grant? So we aren't limiting who can or can't apply, so we're just looking for trusted messengers who can really get the word out, make sure that people are filling out the census. We are confirming details on subcontracting, so we'll get back to you on that. How frequent will grantee meetings be held? Can we join via phone or Zoom? It's a little bit too early to tell. We are thinking about how we coordinate with others. We know there, every county has complete count committees and subcommittee meetings, and you may have other grantee meetings. So we will make it available to join remotely by phone or Zoom, but most importantly, we want to create a forum where people are sharing and learning together, and depending on who applies and who is selected as a grantee, that will also determine how frequently they meet and what the topics will be. So will this webinar be available after the call? Yes. Being recorded, we'll post it on uwba.org/census. So if you missed part of it, since we sent out the wrong Zoom link, we will have it available and we'll send it out to everyone who registered for the webinar. What are the character word limits? So there are no word limits. There was another question about word limits or format requirements. So we want the applicant questions and the cover sheet to be submitted via PDF, but in terms of word limits, there aren't any. We do anticipate reviewing many proposals, and we won't be able to fund all of them. So please be complete but succinct and mindful that you'll be one of many applications being reviewed. Who should I contact with questions? So census2020@uwba.org. There's several of us, or all of us here. We'll be monitoring that inbox and can answer questions. Another question we've gotten is that we applied for the Bay Area Census Funders Collaborative RFP and through the Northern California Grantmakers. And how are the funding sources coordinated? Will you be funding the same agencies or different ones? So that the Census Funders Collaborative RFP is on a sort of slightly different time frame. I think they've already closed their RFP and they're going to release their decisions in August. And we won't know who's receiving funding from them until August, but we are speaking to them. We've actively been engaged with them to make sure that various populations are covered. So we are planning to get together with them in July to make sure that there is Bay Area coverage. We have geographical preference for any particular county. So we're not prioritizing any one of the 7 counties we mentioned over another, but we are aware that some of the counties have more resources than others, and it's probably because of the presence of HTC populations and or availability of funding sources. So we will look at the geographical spread among the grantees that we choose. Can I apply for more than one focus area? Yes, just make sure to answer all of the questions for each focus area. Can we apply as a coalition or a collaborative? That's another question that came in just now. Yes, you may apply as a coalition or a collaborative. And again, we are checking the requirements for the subcontracting since this is state funding that we're getting. Do I have to be a 501c3 to apply? So we're also getting clarification on this. We'll provide more clarification once we get it, and we'll be sure to post all of the FAQs and the questions we've gotten and the answers on our uwba.org/census site. But we think more than 501c3s can apply. So all questions are due to census2020@uwba.org by Friday, June 14th, and we will post all of the questions we've received and answers on the website after the 14th. So there are questions that have come in, so I'm going to read them and we can answer as possible. One of the questions is, what data is reportable back to us on a monthly basis?
What data are they responsible for? So it'll mostly be around the activities that you've applied to do. So if you said you were going to do events, then you're going to have to tell us who came to the event, what hard to count population were they from. I also think you're going to need to know, was it a positive experience, right? Like, do you think they're going to do the census now, or did they say forget you and walk out? You're going to have to know if you're a questionnaire assistance center, how many people visited your center. If you're, canvassing, how many places did you go? What census tract were you in? That kind of thing. So it's going to be basically on your very specific activities. And something that's not explicitly mentioned here is the state is requiring the use of a system called SWORD. And so as the ACBO, we're going to be putting all of your data in there. There is some talk, some of this has not been figured out. So there is some talk that you all as subcontractors might go directly into SWORD. There's also talk you might not, and the ACBO will do all of that. So some of that is being figured out. But either way, we're going to need to know the data. So we're going to have to start collecting the data, whether you go directly into SWORD or not. We plan to have a person here on staff that will be a TA provider either way to help you with the template, with your data collection process, to get it in, to make sure we can all get it into SWORD.
Another question, what is the time period for the QAC to be open?
Yeah, so we did not hear, that's a good question because we didn't really cover the timeline of the census in general. So if we've heard that about March 23rd-ish is when people will start to receive their postcard in the mail that has their PIN number, and they are going to use that PIN number to go online and take the census. Technically, Census Day is April 1. But then so you could help with you could have a questionnaire assistance center that opens March 23rd. You could be promoting it in advance, say come take your census. You could be open on Census Day and then throughout April. I think you could also be open throughout May. You could probably even be open throughout the summer. I think the bulk of the work will be March, April, May. But then starting in May will be what we call a non-response follow-up period. So this will be where Some of the Census Bureau workers will be out in the field knocking on doors to people who haven't responded. So the more you can get people to answer in March and April, the better. That's really the bulk of the work.
Eric or Robert, from my work, please.
Well, I'm going to grab a drink real quick.
Sorry, okay, I'm sorry.
Was that
Was that Dave? I'm not actually sure. Oh, I guess people can unmute themselves, so that's how that happened. But so we'll take, if you have questions on the phone, we'll get to you in just a minute. Let us get through the chat really quick.
For the California subcontracting requirements, are formerly incarcerated individuals who have a felony record excluded?
Do you mean, sorry, I guess I need a little more clarification. Do you mean like, can they receive a subcontract? We're not going to be giving subcontracts to an individual, if that's what you're asking. But are they excluded from doing the work or working for the Census Bureau? I'm not sure. So if you want to chat again, we can try to clarify that.
Or email it to.
Or email it to census2020@uwba.org.
What is the limit or range of grants available to a coalition of 8 to 10 organizations working on a collective impact approach?
I mean, the range we've put out there is 5,000 to 50,000. I think if you have something more specific that you want to send to the census2020@uwba.org, we might be able to give you some guidance on that. I mean, and that's part of the reason we didn't give you any specific amounts for specific types of projects, because we wanted you to think through, what does this project cost? I think we'd be open to something that could cover a project between 8 to 10 organizations, but I would want to know more about it. So if you want to submit that through Census 2020, give like a few sentences on what that means and what they do, we can provide you some guidance there.
How many focus areas can you apply for?
You can apply for 5. That's all of them.
Okay, is there a measure of target populations to be reached? For instance, are you funding group meetings for 600 HTC people, or are you trying to reach thousands of people?
I mean, every single person in the Bay Area has to, in the country has to be counted. So, I mean, I think part of the work of a trusted messenger is to work in small communities. So I'm not imagining every single event has to have thousands of people at it. So I think it's both. I don't think it's either. I think there's going to be some places where you could get hundreds of people, and sometimes you're going to have 20 people in a room and really, you know, coach them on feeling better about, you know, if they're scared of the government and don't want to answer the questions, you know, you could coach them on, you know, their choices and their options. So I think it's all.
Can you clarify what primary and secondary target populations mean?
Yes, and thank you for asking that question, because that was actually a last minute add to our RFP, because another funder suggested we do that. Because in fact, if any of you are on the phone and you filled out the interest form in January when we were applying, we asked you which hard to count populations you serve, and most of the time I got all of them, like all 12, 15 were in that list, because you probably do, right? And many people fall into a lot of those categories. So it's, no one human is in one of those categories. So what our purpose of asking for primary and secondary is sort of, if you have a primary population you serve, like if you work, with Latinx families, right? If that's your primary population, put that. Of course, those people are also, maybe some of them are immigrants and they have kids that are 0 to 5, and, of all the categories. So if you could pick a couple just to say, this is our primary focus, just so that we know. And the purpose of it, you should know, is so that we're making sure there's coverage in the Bay Area. So we're going to use that data to go back to this giant map we're going to make in July with the other funders and say, did we get all the populations and did we get all the geographies covered? So that's why we want to know that.
Is there a way for 2 organizations to apply together even with the no regranting rule?
Yes, also thank you for asking that question too, because like Anna said, we are getting more clarification on the subcontracting rules from the state. So yes, I think you can apply together. Yes, you will have more information on whether you can subcontract to another organization. I know David from the state census office is on the line, if he persisted through the Zoom links, but he's finding out for us some very specific rules. I think we're also telling you could have a fiscal sponsor, right? So I think we're gonna be able to do it and we can figure it out. So yes, answer is yes.
Where do we download the cover sheet? What's the URL website? It's uwba.org/census. The cover sheet is the first page of the RFP.
Yeah, and I'll go back to that RFP slide, the very first slide that Elise covered. It has the URL. So if you go here, there's a box for the RFP, which is a PDF right now, and the PDF just lists the questions in order. So you're going to have to, create a Word document, throw those questions in there, and type it up, and then make it a PDF to send it back to us. But that's where you get the RFP. The questions are listed there.
Will we be able to submit PDF attachments with visuals?
Yes,
Is there a monthly reporting template?
there will be.
How many grants will be?
I feel like I'm playing a game show right now. Okay.
How many grants will be awarded?
We don't know that yet. I think it'll depend on who applies and for what projects and et cetera.
How do people receive their PIN number?
So the PIN number to take the census is going to come in the mail. The Bureau and when I say the Bureau, I'm talking about the U.S. Census Bureau. They worked with a lot of partners over the last, I think over a year. I know they were doing it last summer, but probably even before that, to identify all the addresses in the country. So, looking for is there an in-law back there that's a separate unit? And so they've collected everyone's address. I think there's another process maybe this summer that's looking at addresses. And then they're gonna send a postcard in the mail. And it's going to be in, I can't remember the languages it's gonna be in, but I think it's gonna have at least a sentence in other languages to refer people to where to get their information in a different language. But you look like maybe you have more clarification on the question.
No, the earlier question, but we have a lot more questions coming in.
Okay. Probably saying confusing things and only begging more questions.
The earlier question about subcontracting to formerly incarcerated, the organization is going to use funding for hiring outreach workers who are formerly incarcerated.
That's a good question. I do think there is some kind of background check the state's requiring, we had to say what our background check process is here at the United Way. But I can get you more. If you give me that question in the inbox, we can try to answer that, what the state's going to require. But yes, yes, I think, the whole, my whole philosophy, and I think you all agree, is the folks that are going to be knocking on doors, whether that's actual enumerators from the Bureau or the canvassers, outreach workers, need to be from the community and need to, they're going to be the trusted messengers for people. So I think it's important that communities included.
When is the last day people can register to be counted? So when does the census close?
I think it goes through that summer. I think in September is usually when they wrap things up, and that because they deliver the results to the president, I believe. I think December is when their plan for that is.
So do you have a sense of the frequency or number of grantee meetings?
Yeah, we don't. We're kind of all shaking our head here, but just because we're trying to be mindful of all these funding sources you all are applying for. So if you applied to the collaborative, they don't know yet either. And we've thrown out some ideas could we just do one big one? Maybe by county or maybe by region. We want to use your time well, but we need to communicate some stuff to you every once in a while. So I can't imagine them being any more than quarterly and also collaboratively with these other funders. So know that we're being mindful of that.
How many grants do we anticipate making by county?
We don't know.
We don't know. It depends on what we get. Are you interested in projects that link census participation to other forms of civic engagement, such as voting?
We would love that.
How do you complete the census if you lose the PIN?
You can call, there's a number you can call, you can go online, and I actually think if you call the phone number, you don't need the PIN, you can give them your address. So that's possible too.
Will the postcards be in multiple languages?
Yes. Something will be in multiple languages on the postcard. And then online when you go, it will be in 13 languages, English, and then 12 non-English languages.
What if we are awarded by other funders for this work? Will you also award on top of what was given or to supplement? What should we apply for?
That I gave the same advice. I went to several, and I know Ellen from our team who's here also did this. We went to some of those collaborative funder sessions, and we got that same question. So if you have a big project and you applied, you don't get what you want there. I mean, you could apply for the same project and hope that we all cover it, right? I don't want, if it's a project that costs $5,000, I don't think you should, I don't want to fund that and you've got that funded by the collaborative, right? But I won't know that, obviously. But we are, again, we are working with the Bay Area Census Funders Collaborative to identify grantees and work together. But you can apply for your project that you applied for with them, with us, to help you expand it or to help, fully fund it. Absolutely.
And that's one of the questions we specifically asked that, so we know that. And we have several questions around the homeless population. How did the homeless obtain their PIN number? What if they don't receive a PIN? What's the process for them to be counted? How do they register if they don't have one?
So for there's actually a different process for people who are homeless. There's going to be teams of people that go out to shelter. They're going to work directly with shelters to count people. There also, there's encampments or other places, like maybe if people are living in cars. There's some ideas. The counties that are working, on this, and also the ACBO we're actually going to be developing some more detailed plans on how to do this really well in every county, or as best as we can with the resources, knowing that this population moves a lot. How do we find, so they won't need the PIN in the same way. They're probably going to be on a paper form, and those paper forms are going to be brought to them on some regular basis. And I am not the expert on that exact plan, but we will know more, and this summer is actually a lot of the very specific planning happening. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in working with homeless people, I would love that project too, right? Because I think, yes, a lot of it's on the Census Bureau, but we're going to have to do some education and outreach in advance of the Census Bureau or us showing up to do the census.
Does the group served need to be within one of the defined categories for HTC?
I don't know if I know. I mean, yes, the purpose of this grant is to reach hard to count population. So if you feel like there's a lot, it's really exhaustive. Maybe it's not. I'm sure there are people that aren't here, but it's a big list, and I would be surprised. I'm open to it. Send it to the inbox. We'll figure it out for you.
So a few questions on the citizenship question. Will United Way provide actual information about the options regarding the citizenship question?
Yes.
If people skip the question, will enumerators come? Will the census be thrown away and therefore uncounted?
Yes, we will. We're working on that right now, even in just anticipation of the decision from the Supreme Court. But there's actually some really great organizations that have done a lot of work on this that we will be working with to get the right kind of information in language out to the community and to you as subcontractors for you to use in your work with the community.
Does monthly reporting also include budget expenditures every month?
No. I haven't even been asked that or thought about that once, but I can tell you as an organization that has to report monthly expenditures for grants we get, I don't think so. That's not something we have seen that we're required to by the state as ACBO, so I envision it not being a requirement of the subcontractors.
How much money is the total pot United Way regranting?
It's about 1.5 million.
How do we count undocumented?
Same as everybody. If you live somewhere, then you need to be counted.
Will United Way partially fund grant applications? Could there be a negotiation on the grant amount?
Probably. Like if you propose something that's going to cost $50,000, we might say narrow it and do it for this, if you want to do it for this amount. I can imagine that scenario. I don't know. I'd be curious what that project is, so I don't know.
For some counties, we might be able to get live census data, like which counties have more people completed the census. Will United Way be able to get that?
Yes, so we've heard that we're going to get real-time data. That's also part of this really important SWORD reporting that we're going to be doing. That might even happen more in real time than monthly, like as you do an event, because we're going to be getting the response rate from the Bureau. So we can match that with, we just had an event last weekend and that response rate went up in that census tract. So then we can say, okay, where did we not get the rate and act accordingly.
Is it one person per household that does the reporting?
So, I mean, it only logistically that makes sense to me that you wouldn't like pass the computer around to several people, but one household, one address fills it out for everyone there. Whether it's a multi-family, maybe there's 3 families living there. That one person has to put everybody there, all the kids, all the grandparents, all the friends and uncles and everybody that live there in that address. That's the end. Whoa. All right, so I'm going to unmute people. I'm a little scared, but I'm going to do it, only because it might get loud. So if you're in a loud place and you don't have a question, please go ahead and mute yourself, but I'm going to unmute everybody. If there's any questions on the phone for people who couldn't chat.
Sorry, one more question. Is one household even if they're renting out rooms to non-family members?
Any questions?
What if people fill out the census multiple times?
As long as the address is there, I think the Bureau can flag it, but that might mean that a numerator goes there, right, to reconcile that. I think if you're going online, you might not be able to do it twice. But if you, like, one of you got a paper, I think there's I think a lot just because I know that I don't remember all the details about the system. I know that people will get a paper form eventually if they don't respond. But again, well, maybe I didn't say this here, but the paper form's only in 2 languages, so that's not good enough. So we want to provide people as many access points for help as we can. Any other questions? Okay, well, even with a late start, we managed to end on time. I'll just thank you all and look forward to your questions in the inbox if you have more specifics that you would rather just get addressed there. Again, we will post those after the 14th is a Friday, so we'll collect those until Friday the 14th, and then we'll post them the next week. So you have answers as you're doing the RFP, and we encourage creativity and we encourage collaboration, and we're just really excited to partner with you all on this, and we're glad you're here, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.